How long can two people carry love before the weight of silence becomes too heavy? Can a marriage survive fame, distance, and the slow erosion of intimacy when the world believes it is perfect? And when the spotlight dims, what remains of a partnership built on promises whispered far away from Hollywood's noise? These questions linger in the story of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, a love once celebrated as one of Hollywood's rare fairy tales but now remembered as a union that carried both tenderness and heartbreak. Their lives together were marked not by constant spectacle but by moments of real vulnerability, resilience, and ultimately, separation. It is a story that shows how even the brightest stars can carry shadows in their personal lives, hidden behind red carpet smiles and applause. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban first crossed paths in 2005 at the JED USA Gala, an event that was more formal than romantic, yet something subtle passed between them. Nicole, already an Oscar-winning actress who had endured the public collapse of her marriage with Tom Cruise, carried the quiet scars of heartbreak. Keith, a rising country music star, was battling his own demons, with addiction already threatening the stability of his career. Their meeting was not dramatic or love at first sight in the Hollywood sense. It was understated, almost ordinary. And yet, there was a spark that neither of them could ignore, though Nicole later admitted she was unsure at first if Keith felt the same. The answer came on her birthday. Keith surprised Nicole with flowers outside her home in New York, an act that was small but sincere, one that signaled his seriousness. That gesture shifted everything for her, transforming hesitation into hope. In the months that followed, they began blending two very different lives. Nicole's world was structured, orderly, and often shaped by the expectations of her career. Keith's was more spontaneous, fueled by music and creativity. Somehow, those differences worked, creating a balance that felt rare and authentic in a city where relationships often dissolve under the pressure of fame. Beneath that connection, however, both carried wounds that required trust, honesty, and patience to heal. Marriage came swiftly, just a year later in June 2006, in Sydney, Australia. Unlike many celebrity weddings, theirs was private and intimate, filled with personal meaning rather than grand displays. Nicole's children from her previous marriage were present, reinforcing a sense of blended family and belonging. The couple escaped to Fiji for a honeymoon that gave them rare moments of privacy, away from flashing cameras and public expectations. But the honeymoon phase did not erase Keith's struggles. His addiction continued to shadow their early marriage, testing them in ways neither had anticipated. Not long after their vows, Keith entered rehab, a decision that Nicole supported fully, even if it meant stepping away from her own commitments. She shielded him from media scrutiny, choosing loyalty and love over career obligations during that time. Friends close to the couple later noted how Nicole seemed to disappear from the spotlight, not for her own sake but to stand by her husband. Letters passed between them during this period, filled with forgiveness, gratitude, and a fierce determination to rebuild. This was not the glamorous side of love, but it was perhaps the truest side. Two people clinging to each other in the midst of pain, fighting for a future they desperately wanted to preserve. Their perseverance brought new beginnings. In 2008, Nicole gave birth to their first daughter, Sunday Rose, describing the experience as a spiritual renewal, almost like a second chance at motherhood. 2 years later, in 2010, Faith Margaret was born through surrogacy, a decision that reflected the couple's openness about their fertility struggles. Nicole's honesty on this topic resonated with countless women, and it marked a moment where her personal life connected with the struggles of many beyond the Hollywood bubble. The family settled into a home in Nashville, Tennessee, far from Los Angeles. Their house became a sanctuary where music, art, and laughter filled the rooms. Nicole's career continued to thrive, with acclaimed film roles keeping her in the global spotlight, while Keith's tours and albums cemented him as one of country music's biggest stars. Yet with success came strain. Nicole's filming schedules often kept her away for weeks at a time, while Keith's tours pulled him across continents. They stayed connected through late-night phone calls and video chats, but the gap between them slowly widened. Affection remained, but true closeness was harder to maintain. By the mid-2010s, subtle signs of strain were visible to those who looked closely. On red carpets, they still smiled, still held hands, but behind the scenes there were cracks. Keith often seemed out of place in Hollywood social circles, while Nicole, more at ease, thrived in those settings. When she returned home from intense film shoots, she often carried exhaustion, while Keith returned from tours energized, their emotional rhythms misaligned. Social media posts lost their warmth, anniversaries went unnoticed in public, and conversations at home became shorter and more cautious. Nicole tried to bridge the gap with family trips and surprise appearances at Keith's shows, but the intimacy of their early years had been replaced with a more restrained coexistence. As time passed, both turned to their work for solace. Keith poured heartbreak and longing into his lyrics, and Nicole used her roles to channel emotions too difficult to express in her marriage. Friends observed the shift in their relationship, a slow fading of once bright light, replaced by distance and fatigue. Their daughters, now growing, lived in a home that still carried love but with quieter, less frequent laughter. By 2025, the bond that had once seemed unbreakable finally unraveled. The separation did not erupt in scandal or drama but unfolded with calm finality. Keith moved into a rented home in Nashville, while Nicole accepted the quiet truth that their marriage had reached its end. The divorce filing cited irreconcilable differences, the same legal phrase used for countless celebrity splits, but behind those words were nearly 2 decades of love, resilience, forgiveness, and gradual heartbreak. The divorce was amicable, with Nicole retaining primary custody of their daughters, while Keith continued his tours. For Nicole, the end was not about anger but about exhaustion, the exhaustion of holding together something that could no longer be repaired. She later admitted that the deepest wound was not fame or distance, but the invisible ache of being unseen within her own home. To her, love without respect or recognition felt like profound loneliness, and over time, that loneliness became unbearable. Her reflections after the divorce revealed a Nicole Kidman the world had rarely seen: vulnerable, unguarded, and honest. She admitted to her own part in the unraveling, recognizing that her relentless pursuit of perfection and work may have created emotional distance as much as Keith's absences. But she spoke without bitterness, instead emphasizing gratitude for the lessons the marriage had brought her. Walking away, she explained, was not a defeat but an act of self-preservation, a choice to reclaim her own sense of worth and peace. In the months that followed, Nicole retreated from the spotlight, choosing instead to focus on her daughters and her family in Nashville. Her home became a place of quiet healing, supported by her sister Antonia and the grounding presence of her children. During this time, she turned down major Hollywood projects, instead choosing roles that resonated deeply with her personal truth. Acting became a form of catharsis, a way to channel the emotions of loss, recovery, and renewal. She also began speaking more openly about women's mental health and the emotional realities of relationships, using her platform to amplify stories often hidden beneath silence. This shift redefined her public image, not just as an actress, but as a figure of empathy and resilience. Her willingness to speak openly about what many consider private struggles resonated widely, sparking conversations about love, respect, and the silent costs of fame. Keith, by contrast, remained quieter about the split. He returned to touring, pouring his emotions into music, his lyrics echoing the heartbreak of a man navigating loss. His public presence shrank, but his role as a co-parent remained steady. Both he and Nicole prioritized stability for their daughters, determined to keep their lives as normal as possible despite the end of their marriage. What makes this story resonate so deeply is not just the arc of romance and heartbreak but the humanity at its core. Nicole and Keith were not undone by scandal or betrayal in the way tabloids often suggest, but by something more universal: the slow drift apart when life pulls two people in different directions. Their story reveals how love requires more than passion or forgiveness. It requires ongoing presence, attention, and the willingness to truly see one another. Nicole's candidness about her experience gave new language to what it means to feel invisible in love, distinguishing between being adored and being valued. She reminded the world that emotional neglect can be as painful as betrayal, and that strength sometimes lies in recognizing when love is no longer enough. Her ability to share these truths elevated her story beyond gossip, transforming it into a reflection on what countless people experience in their own lives. By the time the media frenzy over the divorce faded, Nicole had emerged with a calmness that surprised many. Her presence in public events carried a quiet strength, her performances gained even deeper emotional resonance, and her personal life reflected a newfound simplicity. Gardening, reading, and family dinners became her focus, far from the grandeur of Hollywood. In this simplicity, she found joy, showing that reinvention does not always mean chasing something new but sometimes rediscovering what was always there. Keith, too, found his own form of renewal through music, though he remained more guarded in public. His silence stood in contrast to Nicole's openness, but both paths reflected their personalities. Hers rooted in expression, his in quiet endurance. What united them after the divorce was their daughters, the one bond they both refused to let fame or separation disturb. Looking at their story in full, from that first quiet meeting in 2005 to the amicable divorce nearly 20 years later, it becomes clear that theirs was not a failure but a testament to the complexities of love. They endured struggles few couples face, from addiction and distance to the relentless pressures of fame. They created moments of deep connection, raised a family, and shared nearly 2 decades of their lives before accepting that love had changed. Nicole's willingness to reclaim her narrative and embrace vulnerability may be the most lasting part of their story. Her honesty transformed her from a figure of glamour into one of authenticity, reminding the world that even those who seem to have it all carry battles invisible to outsiders. In that sense, her story is not just about the end of a marriage, but about the rebirth of a woman who chose peace over pretense. The story of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban is not one of scandal or bitterness, but of endurance, acceptance, and ultimately, renewal. It speaks to the fragile nature of love, the toll of silence, and the power of truth. And while their marriage may have ended, what remains is a powerful reminder that endings can also be beginnings, that heartbreak can give way to self-discovery, and that sometimes the most courageous act is simply choosing to be seen. If you found this story moving and insightful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories about the lives behind the fame.